Welcome back, Leading Teen Writers. Here we are. We're reviewing chapter 4 today of 1984. Let's go ahead and get started. Today we get a closer look at Winston's job. What does he really do in the Ministry of Truth? What are the action items that he takes in order to help the party? Okay, yeah, Winston has shown that he's confused about the party, that he is remembering life before the party, and he's starting to question whether the party actually has the best interest in mind of all of its people. But nevertheless, he's got to go to work every day. So here's comes a theme that we read about in The Book Thief, if you guys remember, of having to show a certain part of yourself in the public world, even if you don't believe in the things that everybody else believes, but you have to go along with it. And here's Winston, even though at home he has his diary, he writes, "Down with Big Brother, down with Big Brother." But when he leaves his house, he must obey the rules and the loyalty. He must show loyalty to Big Brother, or else he will be vaporized. We also learn a little, we get a taste of Newspeak today, and we learn about a surprise character named Comrade Ogilvy. And in your homework today, you're going to be adding a surprise character to your own dystopian novel that you're creating. So let's take a look at who Comrade Ogilvy is and what his relationship is to Winston. First, we're going to get a closer look at the nitty-gritty. What does Winston do every day when he goes to work at the Ministry of Truth? Well, we want to see what it is that he really does when he sits down at his desk. There's a cubicle, and there's 3 holes or orifices. And each of them has a tube. So when you put a message in the hole, it gets sucked up. That's what pneumatic means. It gets sucked up in this tube and ostensibly gets travels to another person who changes the newspaper, who changes a history book in order to reflect this new message that ostensibly comes down from Big Brother. And of course, there's also one where you throw away things that we don't want to be recorded. Because, of course, one of the major themes is being able to control what is said and what the people hear. So you want to, in the tubes, make sure that the information that we want people to know is getting out, and the information we want to hide from people is going to be disposed. For some reason, they were nicknamed memory holes. Remember our motif of memory last week? Why should they be nicknamed memory holes? When one knew that any document was due for destruction, or even when one saw a scrap of waste paper lying about, it was an automatic action to lift the flap of the nearest memory hole and drop it in. Whereupon it would be whirled away on a current of warm air to the enormous furnaces, which were hidden somewhere in the recesses of the building. Burning, destroying. This reminds us of the book thief, right? Burning books was a feature of the Nazi Party. It was a way, of course, for them to be able to signal what books were not allowed to be read, were prohibited from being read. This is a similar theme here. So let's take a look. How does it work? He gets a message. He sits down, he gets a message, and it contains something very brief, almost not even English. But remember, they are trying to impose a new language called Newspeak. Trying to impose this new language in which they break down words as small as possible. So instead of saying Big Brother, they say BB. Instead of saying there was something wrong with the report, Mal reported, Mal meaning bad. And instead of having any subjects or verbs, they just have words. And the point is to very quickly get the idea across, but also to not make it very obvious what the message is, because of course they're trying to manipulate messages. So this is kind of showing how they're manipulating messages so other people can't really read them very well. Okay, so we have the date here. Big Brother's speech malreported, Africa rectify. So Winston gets this and he's like, okay, I need to. Big Brother made a speech in which he wrongly reported something about Africa. Please make sure you change it. That's what rectify means. Change it, rectify. Um, or verify could mean if when you're trying to confirm the truth of something. So he takes this and then he's like, okay, well, since Big Brother said something wrong in a speech on, April or March 17th, Winston has to go back and change that newspaper so that if someone goes back to read it, they don't see that he said anything wrong. It says exactly what he wanted it to say. Okay, so let's practice over here. Forecasts 3-year plan, fourth quarter, 83 misprints. Verify current issue. They found 83 misprints, right? So they didn't get the forecast right. But a forecast is just an educated guess about the future, but they always want to be right. They always want to seem as if they were right all along. So even though their forecasts are wrong, they want Winston to go back and change it so it looks like their forecasts were correct. The Ministry of Plenty malquoted or wrongly quoted chocolate. Please change it and rectify it. Okay, so they said, oh, we have this much chocolate, and they this happens to be something that comes up a lot, but they don't have the economy is not doing very well. They don't have things like chocolate or gin, as you remember. He always is drinking really terrible gin. And so this chocolate is a commodity. It's a commodity that people want, but the economy is not doing very well. And so Big Brother will come out and say, "We have 500 million tons of chocolate," and they really don't. But he's got to go back and change everything. Last one, reporting Big Brother day order double plus ungood. Refs unpersons. Rewrite, full wise, upsub, anti-filing. Wow. This is a long one, but it seems a little intense. One thing I want to look at is unpersons. Unperson is very important because remember, in this time period, people can just disappear. And so instead of being a person, if you don't exist, you're an unperson. And so this is saying that Big Brother reported something and it's really, really not good. It's ungood. It's double plus ungood. It references an unperson. And since we don't want anybody to know that person actually existed, right? That's what the party does. They try to make it seem like that person didn't even exist. They need to go back and they need to rewrite to show that that person never existed. That way people are like, "Oh, I guess the party didn't kill anyone. I guess that person just didn't exist." And this is what Winston has to do every day. So I just love that George Orwell goes into just how much of the media is manipulated by Big Brother. So the process of continuous alteration of all of this knowledge was applied not only to newspapers, but to books, to periodicals, to pamphlets, to posters, leaflets, films, soundtracks, cartoons, photographs, to every kind of literature or documentation which might conceivably hold any political or ideological significance. Day by day and almost minute by minute, the past was brought up to date. In this way, every prediction made by the party could be shown by documentary evidence to have been correct. And this is his issue with dictators, with totalitarian governments, the desire to control everything at the sacrifice of people's individual right to knowledge, individual right to the truth. And Winston just goes along with all of it, right? Because Winston is brought up um, in the party. When he was younger is when the party came into power. Maybe he was part of the spies. Maybe he was part of the youth league. And maybe only now, now that he is, some parts of his memories are coming back to him. He's starting to think, well, wait a minute, maybe all of this stuff that I'm doing, maybe all of this isn't right. Maybe all of this is wrong, even though it seems right. One of my favorite quotes in the whole book is this one right here, because it shows just how meaningless any not any communication becomes in an environment like this. All knowledge is meaningless. So he said, actually, he thought as he readjusted the Ministry of Plenty's figures, remember he's changing the misprints about chocolate, right, whatever. It was not even forgery. He's like, it doesn't even, it's not even that I'm lying about changing anything because it was merely the substitution of one piece of nonsense for another. So even the things that he's changing to are also incorrect, and in another month will be misprinted and or will be reprinted to reflect something new. Anything that someone in power tells you is sugar-coated to get you to believe them. It doesn't really matter if they tell you one thing or a different thing. It's all fabricated. It's all lies. That's what power does to people. Most of the material you were dealing with had no connection with anything in the real world, not even the kind of connection that's contained in a direct lie. Statistics were just as much a fantasy in their original version as in their rectified version. A great deal of the time you were expected to make them up out of your head. For example, the Ministry of Plenty's forecast estimated the output of boots for the quarter at 140 million, 5 million pairs. We're going to make this many boots, but the actual output was given as 62 million. Winston, however, in rewriting the forecast, marked the figure down to 57, so as to allow for the usual claim that the quota had been overfilled, because they want to show that, oh, we made more than we even anticipated, right? That's just a strategy. It's just a tactic. It's all lies. In any case, 62 million was no nearer the truth than 57 million, or than 145 million. Very likely, no boots had been produced at all. Likelier still, nobody knew how many had been produced, much less cared. All one knew was that every quarter, astronomical numbers of boots were produced on paper while perhaps half the population of Oceania went barefoot. And this is the irony of the story of people in power. They show greatness, they show success, they show victory. But what is really the truth behind that? Who's even demanding the truth? And so it was with every class of recorded fact, great or small. Everything faded away into a shadow world in which finally even the date of the year had become uncertain. You don't know who you are, where you are, what you are, and that's the tragedy of these kinds of regimes. Next, we're going to get into some other characters in this chapter. Winston works with someone named Tillotson, who is someone we see also at the Ministry of Truth, who is suspected to also be doing the same thing that Winston is doing. Winston even says, I don't think I'm the only one doing these messages because Big Brother doesn't trust anybody. So he probably has hundreds of people rewriting the same messages just to make sure things get done correctly. But then we meet someone named Comrade Ogilvy. And we're going to talk about Comrade Ogilvy, a surprise character that comes up. But I want to get your opinion first about who this character is. So we're going to go to week 22, 1984 activity. Let's go take a look at what you're going to do. Since we're reviewing chapter 4, you're going to go to chapter 4 and you're going to answer this question: who is Comrade Ogilvy and what is his relationship to Winston? You're going to find two quotes from the chapter and write a paragraph response using the quotes as evidence. I'm going to give you 12 minutes to complete this activity, and afterwards we'll resume our lesson. Don't forget to turn it in when you're done. Okay, let's continue. So I did want to go through and just remind us that we get a really great translation of this newspeak in this chapter. So Times 31283 reporting BB day order double on plus good refs on persons rewrite full wise up sub anti filing. That's newspeak. But what would that be in old speak or standard English? It might be rendered like this. The reporting of Big Brother's order for the day in the Times of December 3rd, 1983 is extremely unsatisfactory and makes references to non-existent persons. Rewrite it in full and submit your draft to higher authority before filing. So we can see, I want it to be so that if you ever come across Newsweek in the future, you'll be able to, in future chapters, you'll be able to unpack it. So we got Big Brother, BB, did an order for the day order, and it was extremely unsatisfactory, ungood, but it was double plus ungood. Makes references, refs, to people who don't exist, unpersons. Please rewrite it full and submit your draft up sub, right, up to a higher authority. So submit it to someone higher. Before, ante, we know is the Latin word for before, filing. Okay, fun. Hopefully this can help you translate in the future. But really, we're here just to take a look at who Ogilvy is. And it has to do with this message because this is all about non-existent persons. So if that order for the day in the Times is about non-existent person, we can't talk about them. So what Winston has to do is he has to create a new person to write about. And how is he going to do that? Well, just like statistics, where the people in power just, Big Brother just comes up with any old number to tell you, oh, yeah, this is how many boots we have. Yes, this is how much chocolate we have. Winston is also going to do the same thing. He's going to create a person so that he can rectify the parts of Big Brother's speech that was incorrect. What was needed was a piece of pure fantasy. And suddenly there sprang into his mind, ready-made, as it were, the image of a certain Comrade Ogilvy who had recently died in battle in heroic circumstances. But remember, Winston just made him up on the spot. So there were occasions when Big Brother devoted his order for the day to commemorating some humble rank and file party member whose life and death he held up as an example worthy to be followed. Today he should commemorate Comrade Ogilvy. It was true that there was no such person as Comrade Ogilvy, but a few lines of print and a couple of faked photographs would soon bring him into existence. So Winston is complicit in creating the lies that the party is telling people. Winston thought for the moment, and then he pulled the speakwrite towards him, and he began dictating in Big Brother's familiar style. So he is writing as Big Brother would write, which was easy to imitate because he's been hammered, everybody's been hammered into the way that Big Brother sounds. At the age of 3, Comrade Ogilvy had refused all toys except a drum, a submachine gun, and a model helicopter. So it's all just all, and he was, of course, part of the spies, part of the youth league. He was a perfect party member. And all of this propaganda is something that Winston is forced to create. Even though, as we know, in the privateness of his own home, he knows that this is wrong and he wants to break free from this life of lies, to do something to change 1984, the world of 1984. But at the moment when he leaves his house, he has to be someone like this. Winston debated with himself whether to award Comrade Ogilvy the Order of Conspicuous Merit In the end, he decided against it because of the unnecessary cross-referencing that it would entail. So you can see he's going through all these different little details. Comrade Ogilvy, unimagined an hour ago, was now a fact. It struck him as curious that you could create dead men, but not living ones. Comrade Ogilvy, who had never existed in the present, now existed in the past. And when once the act of forgery was forgotten, he would exist just as authentically and upon the same evidence as Charlemagne or Julius Caesar. These are great figures of the past. However, what we know about them, of course, just comes to us through written documents and history. And I wonder if George Orwell is asking us to think about, is any history true? How do we know the truth of history when people in power have written it and they want to show a particular view in a particular shade, in a particular perspective? Is Orwell suggesting something about history, the slippery notion of the slippery idea that history can ever tell facts? What is truth? What is fiction? This chapter helps us see that through Winston's work at the Ministry of Truth. So your next homework assignment, of course, read chapter number 5. Complete week 22 homework. We're going to go take a look. How are we going to be adding to our creative stories? So in week 22, you'll see we're going to continue writing our dystopian short stories. But since we met Comrade Ogilvy today, who's not really a character, I mean, he's like a fake character, you guys are going to be adding a new surprise character to your story. So you're going to go to your previous assignment, week 21, 1984 homework. You're going to copy and paste your whole story, everything that you've been working on, and you're going to copy it below here. Then you're going to add 2 to 4 more paragraphs of your story, introducing another scene with your main character that reflects your dystopian theme. This is going to be rising action number 3 out of 4. So after this scene, you're going to have one more next week for homework before we get to the climax of your story. But this is what I want you to include. You're going to create a new surprise character that has not been introduced yet. I want you to add a scene of betrayal. So someone hurts someone and betrays someone. And then you're going to create also a dialogue between main character and this new surprise character. So you're copying your story, then you're adding to it, and please go ahead and turn it in when you're finished. I can't wait to read your stories this week. So please enjoy, have fun, read chapter 5, and I'll see you guys next time.